Hello there. My name's Mark, aka the Canardian Jedi, and this is episode 93 of Holocron Chronicles. I am joined by more guests than usual, but as always, I'm joined by my trusty co-pilot, Charlie. Charlie Carden, how you doing?
I'm good. It's a heat wave. It's like Tatooine here in the Midwest in Michigan right now.
Feels like two suns. Yeah.
Temperatures in the 90s, feeling like 100. So, good thing climate change is a myth. Oh, that's right. I said it. I'm teasing. But Mark, you got some new folks here with us. Who break it down for us? Who's in the room?
I do. I have, first off, a local guy. I think this is like one of the first for this podcast of someone whose house I could walk to from here. We've met a couple of times at different cons and through the community. I know you just from seeing you all around, and I follow you online, and it's great to have you on the show. Ryan, how you doing?
Great. How you doing?
Great. It's so... Like Charlie, you know, we've had some Canadians on the show. We've had some people who were very close to you. Even our last guest was like an hour away at the time we were recording.
Right.
Last
exactly.
time. But this is new for me. I'm excited. I'm excited to have a good, local guy on the show. And then we have another guest who's going by Watts, which I think is very, very nice of you to do that to avoid confusion, because your name, and we talked about this earlier, is Mark. You spell yours with a C. I wasn't sure if we'd get along because I don't know if anyone that's not named Mark knows this, but Mark's with a K and Mark's with a C, natural enemies.
Yeah. Wow. It's like
what?
It's like Jedi and Sith.
It's like the two Kirks split by the transporter. My goodness.
I always say when my wife is mad at me, she says my name with a C. And
that's pronounced Kark, right? Kark?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's exactly where she puts this.
Yes. Yeah.
I am completely full of shenanigans, by the way. If anyone's listening, he's like, "Oh my God, I didn't know that was a thing. I got to start going down a Google rabbit hole." But Watts, it's so nice to have you on the show. You just kind of reached out through threads today. I put something on there about who wants to talk Acolyte, and you said me. So welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Oh, thanks so much. I'm super stoked to be here. I got a music-based podcast, but my heart is so much in Star Wars. My ex used to do it with me, used to joke about every once in a while she'd stop me and say, "Hey, you know this isn't a Star Wars podcast, right?" So I was stoked to come on and talk some Star Wars.
Excellent. And your show, Boombox Music Talk, is the name of the show.
Yeah.
So for right now, anyone listening that's used to the show, we're going to save the big introductions for later. Charlie has a bit of a limited time, so we're going to go through our usual how'd you get into Star Wars, tell us about the stuff that you do online, all of that stuff we're going to save for later. Charlie, since you have to bail a little early, let's talk about, first off, who makes this show possible.
I have to attend to my senatorial duties. What can I say? But like we kick off every show, and this is episode 93, so we're kissing up on the big triple dig. When we hit 100 over at Code 47, we had a bracketology which lasted 3 hours. I don't think we can pull that off here, but maybe, something brief pitting the movies together or something. I don't know. We should start brainstorming. But at any rate, yeah, our show is brought to you through the auspices of the wonderful folks over at our Secret Friends Unite Patreon at patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. You can try us out for free for 7 days. You get ad-free versions of our shows, early versions of our shows, bonus content, and we actually do have a standalone Patreon only podcast that we do once a month. We did our first one last month. We have another one coming up here in September. Mark's got a new show where he's walking and talking about all of his deepest thoughts as he's getting himself in shape there. So that's pretty awesome. But let me break it down for you. On our besties level, our friend Chris 1H1D, Derek Trevelyan, my buddy, aka the Figure Dude from here in Michigan, Francie, and Mark. This is my wife's hairdresser who loves the
That's
Bad
awesome.
Movies podcast that my wife and I do.
It's a great one.
Yeah,
It's a
I
good one to
know.
tune
That's
into.
awesome. XCP is a longtime friend of the show and collaborator, Luke Lore. Got to get him back on code at some point. And my awesome uncle, Tim, who's my mother's oldest brother, who's a supporter of the show. On the Friends with Benefits level, John Sidorf, the awesome Phoenix Sisters Entertainment. That's our friend Kelly, friend of the show, and her partner, Crayley. Brendan Myers, Corey and HD, and Matthew Keel. Now, the big fish is our Secret Friends Super Squad, the Nias family of the Twin Cities out there in Minnesota. Sean, Stella, and Henry, we are very grateful for everything that you guys do for us. So once again, patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite, 7 days for free. And if you like it, we'd love to have you stick around, and we think you will. Definitely, when you're looking at Patreon, if you're looking to enroll, please go to the website. We have found out recently that people using a service such as the app on Apple, which I hate to put Apple down, they do charge some not so great fees. So if you are looking to get enrolled, please definitely think about going to the website at patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite for that. All right, end of the commercial. And Mark, if I might, let's start talking about, I even prepared a page of notes. And if you're looking for more truncated thoughts, it's funny because we talked Acolyte on Secret Friends Unite, which will be out by the time you hear this. And Todd went on and on about that, but he still had to chime back in. So we have a comment from him as well. But Mark, how would you like to get started? I have a page of notes, but do your thing.
We're going to jump straight into the Acolyte. Like I said, we'll do the introductions for our guests afterwards. No real news this week that I can think of, aside from I will be getting a copy of Star Wars Outlaws. I was talking to the Ubisoft Canada rep today, and I think I'm going to be able to play that game this week. So we will be covering that in some capacity on the show, which is exciting. But aside from that, no real news. So let's jump right in. And I did put in our Discord group just a call for anyone to share their final thoughts on the Acolyte. So I'll start off with that. Final thoughts on the series as a whole. And as Charlie said, our good friend Todd Oxtra chimed in with, I wish the Acolyte had been a more consistent series. At times it showed some excellent action. And so, Charlie, you're changing the font size while I'm reading that.
Chaos Agent.
And so it showed some excellent action and some cool characters, but the story and pacing just didn't deliver for me. I think a lot of reasonable fans or people who have watched this series, I think that's their takeaway. Charlie, I know you're a big New Rockstars guy. Did you see Eric Voss's breakdown of this show and why it got canceled and all that kind of stuff?
I did, and unfortunately I didn't watch that at the time I was making my notes. I did watch somebody who wasn't really well versed in pronunciation, so they called Jackie, which was funny because that's Todd's favorite joke. Jackie Lan is Jackie Moon from the Tropic Thunder, which is from Todd's hometown, Flint, Michigan. Always kind of made me chuckle. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Eric Voss, and I've had a lot of conversations, obviously, with Todd. As I said, we talked about it on SFU with my other best friend, John, who's our other college roommate, who I don't even know that he ended up sampling the show, but followed things kind of from behind the scenes.
Right.
And like I said, I wrote a lot of notes, but I will kind of preface it by this. This kind of thing happens when you take big swings in storytelling. You're going to fail. Failure is the greatest teacher in life. Am I not right? So they took some swings. They set up some things. I mean, this show was it was well promoted. There's Carrie-Anne Moss. There's, a Wookiee Jedi. There's a bunch of this. There's a bunch of that. And ultimately it didn't deliver on what it promised.
Yeah.
And it was reflected in the viewership. There's a graph out there that I looked at. If you put together since 2021, all of the Disney Plus programming for Marvel, all the Disney Plus programming for Star Wars, this is at the bottom of the stack by scores. That being said, Andor didn't blow things away viewership wise, but Andor is regarded by some, and even some of the harshest critics that I know, that would be my friend John, as the best thing that has been on Star Wars Disney Plus. But it had a slow start. This show, was it 2 or 3 episodes on the first evening? I think it was 2.
2.
Yeah.
Once.
And it didn't automatically launch into stardom after those first 2 segments, which Andor did 3, and it really dragged. But you got a little bit more than halfway through, and it just soared. It was incredible. It was gripping. It had great character development. So, yeah, my first take out the gate before I just, I kind of talk myself to death here, is that you take swings. Sometimes you don't connect with the ball, and there comes a time when you're going to have to make room for someone else to tell a different kind of stories. They tried. Did they do their best? Only they know. And I'm never happy when anybody loses their job. Happened to me plenty of times. I'm sure everybody here has experienced this as well. Nobody's like, oh, they got canceled. Yay, that's shitty. And there is people out there saying it. I look forward to them taking what might have moved this story forward in the $22.5 million an episode that they spent to make this, and putting it into something else. Maybe that's not going to be great either, but it stands a chance. It's always taken a chance. And again, if I hated this and people loved it and it shot it to the top of the charts, they would continue to make it. Entertainment is speaking with your wallets, and people were not watching this, and that's the currency by which this is evaluated, unfortunately. So, all right. So I hope you don't feel that was trolling. I'm
no, not at all. No, that's a very honest and
I'm just trying to express an honest opinion that it did not exceed to the levels of quality that I would have expected, and I think that's why it didn't resonate with people.
I think, like, anyone looking at this as a realistic breakdown, a lot of people are saying, oh, the trolls won. Disney listened to the trolls, or if it continued, Disney would have listened to the woke fans or whatever. But when you break it down like that, and there's a big difference between this and Andor, because Andor's budget was higher than this one, and this had a crazy budget. The big difference, if you look at the viewership numbers, is people came back to Andor. And I've been saying all along this, and I have a question about that for everyone. But people didn't come back. This dropped off the Nielsen ratings really quickly. A couple of weeks after it ended, right? So the people,
like a stone in the brook,
the people who enjoyed it, watched it, enjoyed it, did that, maybe told their friends, but those friends didn't come back to watch it. Whereas, like, when that happened with Andor, people were like, this is awesome. Then people came back for weeks after and started watching Andor.
And
if this
Andor
has some sort of resurgence,
was Andor, was it 10 or 12? I think it was 12, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's more episodes.
So it definitely had more to breathe with, and the season was split in half story-wise, because you had, Cassian was on this mission, but then he ended up running this thing where they ripped off the Imperial payroll, and then he went to jail, and then he had to escape from that, and then that's when, so it told different stories, where this was a kind of a single narrative. But one thing that I put in my notes is that it was very just jarring with the here's forward, and then we jump backwards, and then we did and somebody tuning in. And again, the world of streaming is different, because it's not like, oh, I missed last week's episode, I'm going to be lost. No, you just go and you watch it. But that still didn't get the job done. You know what I mean? No. So when you talk about the woke, or the incels, the toxic fandom, whatever it is you want to call them, a surprisingly small, Todd made this point when he and John and I were talking earlier, it's kind of a small chunk of overall fandom. You hear them very loudly, but it's a smaller group of people. If there was a larger group of people that thought this was great, and watched it and subscribed to Disney Plus to watch it, or kept their subscriptions, or just tuned in, because everything is so very finite versus the way it was, 20 years ago, and 50 years before that, with the Nielsen ratings, where this person's got a box in their house and that they're watching it from here to there, where these are the minutes. These are the minutes the program was watched. So you know exactly who's got it on. All right, I've done all the talking. Now I'm going to stop.
All right, so final thoughts, I guess, on the series as a whole. Let's get where you guys stand. Ryan, we'll start with you. What did you feel as on a whole as this series came to an end?
Okay, so basically, like as the series progressed, like I watched the first 2 episodes and I was like, okay, that's fine. Once when we got to the middle, it got a little bit like I was like unsure, but I was still optimistic about it. But then I think it really got good near the end.
Yeah.
Especially with the supposed cameos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely. I agree. It picked up like episode 5. I thought the ending was pretty good, but it did. I don't think it did itself any favors by dropping weekly. Because people, for those hanging episodes in the middle where it was like, what is this? What am I watching? It's fine. The stuff's not making sense. There's plot holes. How does Brick catch on fire? Why are they doing this weird chant?
Right.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
I think people just tuned out, right? And didn't come back for that greatness at the end. Watts, what about you?
Yeah. So for me, I was all in pretty much the entire time. Now, there were certainly pieces of it, that might not have jived with me for a moment. But as a whole, the idea of what they were attempting to do, the story that they were trying to tell to enlighten both sides, to build out this other world that wasn't really in the Skywalker saga, although there's some connections we can obviously talk about. It was still it has the High Republic more vibe. So there's a whole, when you talk about budgets, there's so many things to go into, but talk about budgets, there's so many more things to go into it when you compare it to like an Andor, because Andor was primarily humanoid based, very few aliens, very few really otherworldly tech, ships, any of that. If you compare it to something like Acolyte, where they really did try to do a really good job of putting more of that back in there, because that's been kind of a complaint too among fans is, hey, where's some of the new ships, where are the aliens, and
right,
all that costs money plus design time in a different era, so you're even having to reinvent the aesthetics all around you, period. There's a lot that goes into it, and to pull it off on any semblance of successful, which obviously there is a an audience, and I'm included, but I think there's especially an audience of people that are maybe a little bit younger demographic, people of color, people of different sexual orientations. There's a huge demographic that fucking loves it, and I do too, frankly. But I'm just saying there is a something to it for that I think is an important thing, that even if we don't get a season 2, which we'll talk about, Charlie talking about taking swings, I think that is super important, that we got it at all. Is a win, right? I mean, this was a new thing. Maybe they learn from this and go, okay, cool. This next new thing that we do that's away from the true saga, we'll take these lessons, we'll learn, and we'll do something even better. But I personally, there's so many great moments that are just like now up at the top of my Star Wars list of like, fuck, that's a good moment, or damn, like I really feel that, or just whatever. But there was obviously some pacing issues. There's, I do think, to your point, Mark, I'm a huge fan of weekly releases because I like to sit in it for a while. I like to talk about it. I don't want to have things spoiled. I like especially with Star Wars, I like the fandom to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
However, and this is the last thing I'll stop for a minute, but
No worries.
I think that this kind of, because it would have been better as one drop, is partly because of it telling one story, right?
Yeah.
This kind of
Yeah.
contained story. And I think that's a bigger, like, systemic problem of just the state of streaming right now.
For
Everybody
sure.
wants to tell these kind of like extended movies
Right.
instead
Yeah.
of telling episodic stories, which
Right.
a lot of it isn't even coming. I mean, there's an artistic side, but there's also like the business side of going, okay, you've got 30 minutes per episode. We're only doing 8 episodes. Like, okay, well, I
Right.
guess I need to make a decision. Which way did I go? So
Right.
all
Yeah,
that
true.
kind of swirls in my head for this show.
Yeah. I don't think this is just a Star Wars problem. I think you nailed it with saying this is a streaming problem, because there have been shows that worked really well. Charlie, even you just listing, here's the Marvel and the Star Wars, like even thinking
Right.
of Marvel, like WandaVision worked super well as a
Right.
weekly drop. Couldn't have worked as a movie, because how do you jump through those different eras
Right.
and
Yeah.
different themes and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff? That was a show. That was a perfect show to take advantage of that format, and something that could only work, I think, in that format. Something like Echo, or even Hawkeye for that matter, like I think work better as a drop, especially something like
Mhm.
Echo, because it's fairly short,
Yeah.
fairly
Yeah.
contained,
Small. Yeah.
kind of just
Smaller
tells
story.
one
Yeah.
thing. And
Right.
like Watts just said, it's kind of like a movie. And I think Disney has to figure that out as a whole. I understand from a
Mhm.
business standpoint, you want someone to be there and subscribed for 8 weeks or 12 weeks, because that's
Mhm.
monthly. I mean, I subscribe
Right.
once a year, so I'm locked in anyway. I have a 4-year
Yeah.
old,
Yeah.
so Bluey's got my money till the end of freaking time. But
You
like
bet. Oh yeah.
for
Yeah.
a lot, for a lot of people, I think that is a thing of like, do I subscribe for Netflix? Do I subscribe to Prime this month? And aside
Yeah.
from Disney,
Yeah.
we
Playing
do
the
that all the
yeah
time.
the roulette. Yeah. Exactly.
You
But
know,
it's upon them to layer on content that would appeal to a household that's not just
yeah.
Marvel and Star Wars. And so when you put all your eggs in that one basket, or these two baskets in this case, or maybe it's just all as one, because they tend to lump it in as the Disney, big media deal. They've got to find a new tune,
Mm,
and you've got to create programming, because let's face it, with Star Wars, there was the animated bit, which a lot of it played off of people who grew up watching the Clone Wars, and they transitioned into enjoying the Bad Batch. But next we've got the Skeleton Key coming up. So you're looking to again speak to people of my generation who enjoy the Amblin Entertainment, the ET, or Star Trek Prodigy, which this is a Star Trek adaptation of that.
mm,
Though this will be in live action, but pairing it with a big star, but also putting it moving forward into what the current time period, which is Mandalorian, kind of that Jedi plus 5-6 years, where they're moving forward and telling these stories. Obviously that'll happen with Ahsoka, and it'll happen with
mm,
the Grogu-Lorian movie that's coming out in 2026. So it's like advertising, which I've worked in most of my life. You need to reach the people that you need to reach when they need to see you.
mm,
So you've got to hit up, you've got to take a lot of swings, like making movies. You've got to take your chances that something's going to be a hit. Where the movie wager that I do with John and Todd, we try to pick the domestic top 10 for the summer, and we were, in a lot of ways, we were all over the place, but John and Todd had the same top 5, and they both thought that Despicable Me 4 was going to go all the way, and it's third.
mm.
It's third by a mile.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because Inside Out 2 shot to the top, and I thought Deadpool Wolverine would outperform it, but it didn't, by a score of about 75 million.
Mm,
So you never necessarily know what's going to resonate. So a lot of it is just guesswork. But
yeah.
they have the marketing machine of the universe at their disposal. But maybe that's where they're failing, is they're not really digging deep, and maybe not talking to the fans about what they want to see. You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they might, they might get a solid lead out of that, or it might just be gobbledygook. You know what I mean? It could just be people saying, "We just want to see Han, Luke, and Leia." Well, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to move forward in some ways. I like the moving forward concept, but this tossing it backwards in the past, I thought that, much like Game of Thrones, because look at House of the Dragon and how successful that is, versus the weight of particularly where Game of Thrones ended. You can do that when you pull something further apart from what but I was particularly disdainful of, oh God, they had to throw Yoda in there at the end. That really rubbed me the wrong way. It's like, why did you have to do that?
Oh,
If you
interesting.
Yeah.
if you're gonna really make something separate, make something really separate. You know what I mean? I don't know. But again, it was literally the last shot of the last episode, so I'm not, basically, pitches and I'm not, picturing. What the hell am I trying to say? I'm not lighting the world on fire about it. But yeah, I would have really liked to see something that was a little bit more separate. But overall, I just wanted to see a cohesive story, and I just didn't feel like we got it.
Right.
Yeah.
Ryan,
Can I say something
sorry.
about the Yoda thing?
Yeah.
Sure.
So the way I kind of view it is, as long as there's a narrative reason for them to be there, then it makes sense to me. So, like in Yoda's case, I think because you're playing with this idea of what is a Sith, what's not a Sith, what is not a Sith. If it is a Sith, do they exist? Who knows? There's this kind of cat and mouse game going on about that. When you do have Kiadi-Mundi in there, and you fast forward to something like the Phantom Menace, and I think it's the Phantom Menace where they're having that conversation. Maybe it's one of the later ones. I
No,
get
that's it.
some of it mixed up.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but they're having that conversation, and Kiadi-Mundi's very emphatic about it. Like, nope, this
Right.
did not exist. Did not exist. Very emphatic.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I always kind of looked at Yoda and mine is not working right now. Samuel L. Jackson's character.
Oh, Mace
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 Windu.
Windu. Yeah.
You kind of look at them, and I always, way before any of this, I saw them as going, I don't know, man. I mean, Yoda's been around for a long time. I'm sure he's probably seen them come and go as they're trying to make their plays here and there, right?
Yeah.
So because of that, and that kind of path from Vernestra of she knowing that and her talking to him, then I'm okay with it, right? As long as there's a thread, a narrative thread there that makes sense versus just hey, we threw this thing in there because don't you know this? You all know this, right? Isn't that cool? This is in here too.
Yeah. Ryan, how did you feel about those cameos and that kind of stuff? Would you rather it focus on the characters that were the main part of the show, or did you kind of like them throwing in like Kiadi-Mundi, Yoda, and Plagueis?
I kind of actually didn't like the Kiadi-Mundi cameo, mostly because, again, it just seemed like I'm kind of on the side of the fence that's like, okay, like, again, people argued about the age.
Right.
But I also primarily liked the Plagueis cameo because I was just happy to finally see that, well, at least they confirmed that he's the species that he is in the book.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I
love that.
Canon appearance, and they kept him accurate. And that was one of those reasons that like people were like, "Oh, Leslie Headland's not a real fan. She's trying to make Star Wars woke." And it's like, dude, the deep cuts that she was throwing in there, the stuff that she canonized, like she's the fan. Like, holy crap! So yeah, Ryan, you're
big time.
Yeah, right on. What about the Yoda? Did you think that was just unnecessary, or were you just like, cool, it's Yoda?
I mean, when I saw the Yoda cameo, I didn't know that was going to happen, but I think it was like a neighbor of mine kind of hinted that could happen, or at least he didn't say it was Yoda. But then I almost caught glimpses of it online, but didn't actually see it. But then once I watched it, I was like, okay, that's good. It makes sense because he's alive during that time period.
Yeah.
So I didn't really take any offense to that.
Not only alive, but like at that point, kind of like king shit Jedi. Like he's like, if you're
Yeah.
gonna go to him with something, if you're gonna go to anyone with something serious, it's Yoda. So I did like. I'm kind of like halfway between super pumped and like Charlie, which I think is, I don't know, for me kind of an okay place to be, because I love Yoda as a character, absolute badass. Loved him in the originals. Loved the way he's been portrayed in the High Republic stuff. But for this, it was kind of nice to step away from most of those characters that we've seen and had established. But at the same time, there's that little bit picking at the back of my head of like, this is Yoda at his prime. Are you not calling in the big guns for a Sith?
I
Like, how
mean,
are you
but
going to cover that? What's,
the problem is they didn't call him in to do anything at
right,
all. He was a
right.
I
throwaway,
think that
and
was
I guess
yeah, I
that's
think that was the point, though.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's exactly it. It was
maybe
showing,
so,
I think, the
but
corruption and the lies that,
yeah,
like, they're
to what
keeping this away from
yeah,
the big guy, right? Or the big little guy. So for me, it was just showing like,
yeah.
I wonder what that conversation was going to entail of how is she going to keep this from Yoda? What is going to keep it, like you said, like maybe Yoda probably had some suspicions. He and Mace probably did, but like, I don't think it was ever confirmed. I don't think that conversation went in a way that was open and honest and forthright with like, yeah, the Sith are back. It's kind of my fault. It's my old Padawan. He's doing
Yeah.
some shit. He killed everyone. Like that's not how that conversation was
Uh,
going to go.
Yeah, yeah.
And so aside from cameos, because I think we could break that kind of stuff down. Who were your favorite characters in this? Any standouts? Ryan, let's start with you. Any like of the new cast, and you could throw, you know what, I'm not even going to let you throw Plagueis in there. New cast, people who had actual stuff to do. Who was a standout character for you?
I would say Chimere, because as much as like
Sure.
he's the kind of the Sith character because he's a mystery in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
but then once when he unveils himself like without the helmet and stuff like that, you kind of see a perspective in him where I kind of could kind of get where it was going, where he was trying to either convince, well, he was trying to team up with Osha to get to team up with him. So it could potentially lead to the whole tradition of a Sith apprentice trying to kill a master, but trying to do a team up, very similar to what was done with Legends with Malik and Revan.
Yep.
So, but that's what I kind of liked about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Watts, standout character?
Yeah, it's hard to pick. To me, there's kind of like two buckets. Like in terms of really meaty stuff to do. I mean, Chimere definitely is at the top. I mean, whether it's the action stuff was super well done to me, really fun, kind of new stuff, but it was also all of the kind of just subtleties in the performance throughout, especially the conversations with Osha on the Cortosis area, planet, moon, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Just so smooth, but saying wise things. I also think there were moments with Soul that I thought were just crushing, like some of the best acting that we've had in Star Wars. I mean, in my opinion, I hate to say best because it's all relative, but for me, just hit me like after his whole team is decimated and you see him on the ship, just they took that moment to just let him breathe for a second and process it, and then also Mother Anastasia, I think, is such a rich character. Like every time she was on screen, I did not want to look away. It was like mesmerizing. I wanted to hear everything she had to say, how she said it. I choose mother. Like, what a fucking cool line. Like, despite all of my witches and my coven that are my people, this is my girls, man. Like, I choose mother. So all of those just really top of the line for me. But secretly, I would love to have seen more Jeckie and more Rayancourt.
Yeah.
Both of them. Like, just, I would love every little
Yeah.
moment we had with them, but we just didn't have very much.
Very, very true. Yeah. Jackie, especially for me, like for a Padawan to hold her own against a Sith who just decimated a bunch of like full-on Jedi, like, yeah, powerhouse. Let's go. I just wish we had a little bit more time with that character, but I understand. And that fragility of every character is one of the things that I thought stood out about this show. Is you
No, I
never
agree.
like starting off killing Carrie-Anne Moss, it was instantly like, holy crap, no one is safe in
Yeah.
this show. You
Yeah,
knew
yeah.
straight off no
True
one's safe.
that.
But yeah, you brought up something that I've said on the show a couple of times, which was, and Ryan, you kind of echoed it too. Chimera had some points that, to me anyway, were the most enticing arguments for the dark side or for the Sith. I
Totally.
like my name online is Canardian Jedi. I have a Jedi tattoo. I am light side all the way. And we've had like 93 episodes worth of people who have gone light side, dark side, and everything in between. But I always go light. But listening to Chimera speak and how he broke it down was like, oh, okay, Darth Muscles, let's maybe take a walk and have a talk. And like,
his muscly back.
yeah,
And
you might start
you see,
convincing me otherwise.
yeah, you've
Yeah.
seen that bit with the translation. So he drops the cloak off his shoulders.
Oh,
It sounds like a Fabio novel. Oh my god!
the described video. It is
Yes.
fantastic if anyone wants to listen. Charlie, same question for you. Any different standout characters? Are you kind of feeling the same?
I mean, echoing what's been said, Kamir or Jason from The Good Place, as I wrote him in my notes, because I think that's a better resonation. Jason from Florida was great, and again, casting aspersions into the mind of our main character, making her think, and then ultimately making her, do a 180. With his influence was really I think the best and the most compelling of what was going on in this show. Without a doubt, showing the cracks in the armor and the descent of the Jedi. Yeah, absolutely.
That manipulation too, right? Like that's what I think is so cool, because it wasn't just, it was very Palpatine-esque, where it's not just one form. It's not like they just have one way to get you to turn to the dark side. I mean, the way he treated, Osha and May, those situations were extremely different, because he could intuit from them what was needed, what they were, searching for, what would make them a little more complete, and therefore entice them the most. It was two different modes, which is really cool to watch.
Yeah, and admitted to that, which I thought was an interesting take, and it didn't seem like pure manipulation unless he was manipulating me, which is a deeper level of this show. But like admitted to, I made some mistakes with your sister. I did this. I did that. I'm responsible for her kind of rejecting my teachings, and I'm not going to make the same mistakes with you. I'm going to treat you in a different way. Like openly admitting, openly speaking about that, and being like, I'm fallible, and knowing that the Jedi are kind of at this point in the timeline looking at themselves as infallible, as again, that the Senate, the guy from the Senate kind of saying like, you guys are just superheroes on the loose, you need to be contained. And then hearing this person saying like, yeah, I got to change myself. I understand that I can make mistakes. And like, whoa, crap, the Jedi aren't saying that right now. That's a couple of 100 years ago Jedi that could go out and be, wayfinders and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I noticed one
Which
thing.
gave it credibility too, right?
Yeah.
Like, gave him credibility. It made it a little more three-dimensional, right, as a character. Maybe he actually does believe what he's saying, and he cares about this person. It's not, maybe that's why it's different, right? So it was really hard to tell.
Very. So I noticed one thing with something we're all saying, and I want to kind of use this as a segue into talking about the show not being picked up for a season 2. None of us said that Osha or May were standout characters. Do you think one of the downfalls of this show that maybe led to it not being picked up is there were more interesting characters than the main character. And I know that's happened on a lot of shows. A lot of times you
Yeah.
watch a story. I just watched a breakdown of like a couple of guys on from New Girl talking about like you have, you know, in a sitcom kind of thing. And they broke it down of like, you know, you have your romantic pair or like the main characters kind of thing, but then you
Yeah.
always have the person that people tune in to see, whether it's like
Right.
Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, Schmidt from New Girl, or something like that.
Yeah.
Of like,
Yeah.
you can't have it all focused on the main characters in a sitcom. Do you guys think it's the same thing with this show of like, here's the main characters, but the side characters are more interesting? Or do you think they made a mistake, whether through the writing or acting or focus or again, someone brought up earlier, listening to what the fans want? Do you think
Yeah.
this would have been a more interesting show if it was a Chimera show, if it was all told through Soul's point of view? Or do you think, you know, there were other problems and Osha and May just happened to be caught up in it? Ryan, again, we'll start with you. And I'm also just kind of going, by the way,
Yeah.
like over
Yeah, I
here,
do that
like,
too.
based on
Yeah,
my
what I
who's
see.
lined up on
Yeah.
my screen. If you guys are wondering
Right.
why I keep going that way,
Yeah.
I'm reading
Yep.
left to right.
Yeah.
So Ryan, let's start with you. How did you feel about like what I just said? Basically, the main characters not standing out.
Well, I think the reasons why they didn't stand out is that, especially when they're introduced in the beginning, I kind of felt that they kind of seemed kind of like very flat. Like it just like they didn't seem to have like a lot of like personality to them, which is
Mhm.
a take I've actually heard somewhere before, that they themselves, it's like, because the two of them are essentially, again, it's confirmed that they're the same person.
Yeah.
So like they do act literally the same, and then like the way that they behaved in different situations, whether it was May fighting uh, the person in the beginning of the show, was like there was no really any tension there. It was like, okay,
Mhm.
come on, fight me, and
Yeah.
then like just kind of very blank expression, especially during like tense moments. It just didn't really fly with me at all. So I think with the fact these characters in particular just didn't really have a lot to them. Whereas you got the more interesting characters like Chimera, for example. I mean,
Mhm.
I would have thought if they were going to do Acolyte, I feel like he should have really been the focus.
Right. People do love to root for the bad guy, and yeah, if any of the characters really resonated with a larger audience, we wouldn't be having this part of the conversation.
Right.
You know, people did love the big fight sequences. That was something that was praised and enjoyed even by, you know, tougher critics like Extra. But yeah, when your main characters aren't the thing that you're like, oh God, what's going to happen to them? And I'm tuning in to see what's going on with them, or their story is so this or that. And again, unfortunately, the proof is in the pudding. You know, whoever tuned into that first episode and were like, hey, I want to find out what this is all about, and just didn't catch the fever. It went down very quickly from that, because it was 2 episodes to drop and then a month that followed, if I'm remembering correctly. So 5 weeks.
Yeah.
I think of this, and yeah, people were not, and I don't have a chart in front of me that shows week to week, but things obviously sunk very fast because there was not a connection. So we didn't even really get Chimera, the stranger, and his machinations, but for Beyond the Shadows, until episodes 4 or 5. So by this point, we're already done. It was kind of too little, too late. So yeah, I think, you know, why didn't it resonate? You didn't have that hook that got captured. Again, you're trying to cast a wider net to pull in the normies, as it were, you know, people who aren't necessarily Star Wars fans but know about it in passing, and they know lightsabers and they know Jedi's doing flips and shit, and it's exciting to watch, and it didn't click. I think at that early stage, that's probably what led us to where we are now.
Yeah, fair assessment. Watts, what are your opinions on character focus?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the overall why do we hadn't have a season 2 conversation, I think it's a bigger conversation. I think there's a lot of things at play, like were talking about earlier. Just also the state of the industry, company stuff. There's a lot of stuff at play, but I do think you bring up a great point about that. And I think sometimes, even Ryan, what you were saying, I think sometimes you pigeonhole your actors without thinking about it, because if you do take May and Osha, well, you are splitting somebody into two things, one person into two sides, essentially, kind of for a lot of the show. It's light and dark. That's a really tough thing to ask any actor to do, even the most seasoned actors, to go, okay, you got to play bad version, you got to play good version, but you got to have full range too at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a tough thing to pull off, especially when you happen to have some really cool characters and performances going on around you too.
Yeah.
It gets really tough. And trying to balance, I will say, as much as I love the full cast, it's a lot of stories, a lot of pieces, a lot of things going on for an eight. If you had old school 22 episodes to flesh this out or
Yeah.
something, or even just 13 or 14 episodes, maybe a different, we're having a different conversation. But you got 8 episodes, 30 minutes an episode, and you've got that many storylines going on. I think, to your point, not only those other people outshining a little bit, but also just focus in general probably would have, and Charlie, like you were saying, like some kind of focus to then hook, so people
Mhm.
knew what to hook on to, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And that's
agreed.
where, for me, that's kind of where a lot of it fell apart. And overall, I liked the show, liked it, not loved it, but I found that was a big thing of that pacing issue. Having the 2 flashback episodes out of 8 episodes, and essentially the same episode told from like kind of 2 different perspectives, was like, man, your time management is just a little off on this
Mhm.
one.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
like you said, Watts, like with so many other, pardon the pun, threads going in so many different directions and so many characters that I wanted to know more about. Like, you're giving me a Wookiee Jedi who's dead when he shows up on arrival, has one cool berserker scene, and then is like just like done. But you have two like episodes that are flashing back and doing all this kind of like, yeah, there were some pacing issues. But I don't want to dwell on that kind of stuff about the cancellations and everything else. So I want to end this part of the show on kind of more of a high note. And that is, if these stories are continued, how do you want to see that? Do you want to see it as a animated kind of thing? Would you like a book, a comic? Do you want to see it at all? Are you kind of good with just like the mystery of like, yeah, it's over. We can kind of fill in some blanks about like,
Mhm.
Master Apprentice led to,
Yeah.
Sidious and Vader, and it is what it is. Um, so how do you feel about the continuation of these stories? Or are you kind of okay? Again, Ryan, we'll start with you. Um, how are you feeling about with how this is going to go?
I almost feel like just from what I've seen in the past, I think it could be a good direction to put it between the novels and then maybe a comic book series to kind of tie
Mm,
in. And I think specifically, I would think it would be a good idea to do it between knowing at the end with Chimera and Osha, if the series was kind of focused on them two, and it's kind of like the rise of the Sith sort of thing. Like if they
mm.
put it into that series, I think it would kind of really expand it a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah. Charlie.
I'm I'm a fan of you because you know that I'm a monthly reader of certainly the Core Star Wars title, which I talked about that is coming to an end and starting
Yeah.
again. I talked about that on SFU this week, and as a visual medium, and plus I'm really bad at reading books myself personally, like really bad. But yeah, I'd be more of an advocate of a comic series if this was continued. But to be honest with you, I'm good. I guess I'm ready for something new. Because again, this didn't really resonate with me. I can't even really say I didn't love it, but I liked it. It was kind of below average for me, to be honest with you. For me, and unfortunately for enough other people to push Disney in that direction. But it doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that would enjoy it. But again, do some research, do some focus groups, find out what people really want to see.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking a shot in the dark, because it's just like with the, if you flash back to 2018 and the purported failure of, the Han Solo film, which still did a decent clip, but it was a movie so nice they had to make it twice and spend twice as much money. That was considered a failure. And when Disney looked at that, like, well, this is obviously not what people want to see, so we don't have any of those movies anymore.
Yeah.
Or any movies of any kind, apparently, because they can't get one made.
Really.
But yeah, just a year after that, we had The Mandalorian. Everybody fell in love with it. Baby Yoda fever swept the globe, and they're running with it. So you have to follow the money trail, I'm sure that's an old Sherlock Holmes or a detective bit. Follow the money. So that's what you got to do. Follow the money.
Watts, you want to see this continued, or if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see it continued, but you could say that about pretty much any point in Star Wars of any story, just because I love this stuff, right? So
Yeah.
give it to me. Yes, I'd love it. Personally, I would love to see it in an animation form. I think they probably already have plans of where they want to go for the next animated kind of series and stuff. So unless that's already in the cards, probably not going to happen. But I do think it would actually probably be, because they didn't get the people who did really love this story and connect with it, they're not getting a season 2. I think I would love to see maybe a poll or data on this, but I have a large suspicion that a big group that adores the High Republic probably really liked this show. At least in circles that I'm around,
Yep.
a lot of those people, it translated well for them. And that's a whole book initiative universe that is
Yeah.
done super well.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that if they're ending the High Republic in the next year, well, those people are going to want something to go to. And some of those people don't
Yeah.
maybe not care for some of the other time periods. This might be a really cool way to bridge those people in book form, pick the story up, even maybe, bridge it from then to, letting James Luceno write a new Plagueis novel, get him into canon that way, bridge that gap through literature. Actually could be a really fun thing to watch grow.
Yeah. I'd love to see that, but you hit the nail on the head for me when you said animation. I want to see, because they've been doing the Tales series, right? I want to see Tales of the High Republic.
That would be awesome.
And you can do this as a part of that anthology, and you can bounce around that timeline, tell some old stuff, tell some new stuff, follow Vernestra a little bit or some other characters, but you could really show in animation the story that I kind of want to see continue is Osha, Chimere versus Plagueis.
Yeah.
Or how that comes together, right? And you can tell that very succinctly of just, these characters got together. He's training her, as Ryan said, to kind of be that secret apprentice to take over against the master. Here's how it went down. That's a 20-minute episode or whatever. Just show the shit hit the fan. We can fill in the blanks, but that's the ending, right? And again, to watch what you said, like, you want to fill in the blanks, go to the crew that's already invested in the High Republic, comics, novels, young adult, whatever it is. Keep it going there if you want all of that nitty gritty stuff. But I think as like, here's a 20-minute wrap up to this series. I think a Tales episode is like the perfect way to go. So we'll see if they continue it in the future.
Yeah.
I hope they do. Charlie, I know you're mad about it, but I appreciate the, all the spectrum that we have in this, a little bit high, a little bit low.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing that right. You want that diversity.
Well,
of storytelling.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly to my point. They had to take this swing. It wasn't a hit, but not everything is going to be Baby Yoda. You know what I mean? Even if they introduced a cute little rat guy who was running around, which of course my wife loves she loves the Ewoks. She loves Grogu,
Yep.
and she loved the little rat. She loved the rat boy. It was great. But yeah, they'll move on, and in a few months now, hopefully, when Skeleton Key drops, we'll be sitting here talking about, oh, this was the redemption we needed. This takes us back to the spirit of Star Wars from the 1980s, because it was about kids, and this is about kids, and hopefully it'll be the thing to bounce back and give us something new and great. So
I do think it's needed. I do think it's needed. I love the deep storytelling. I love it. However, between Bad Batch, Andor, and the Acolyte, we need some good old fashioned fun whip, bang
right,
zoom Star Wars
totally.
adventure, and I'm hoping the same thing, that it has that kind of feeling to it. We need a little bit of fun in it.
Most
Yep.
def, most def.
We will be here
Cool.
for Skeleton Crew. Charlie, this is your out, I suppose. So we will pause the show and be very back. -1 crew member. All right. Charlie has left us. We wish you the best on your interstellar journey, Charlie. But let's do what is usually the first part of the episode. I'm sure we could have talked about the Acolyte. I know I could have for another while, but to try to keep this episode, relatively succinct, although it's going to probably go over our usual hour. Let's jump right into the questions that we usually do. But first off, I'm going to change this up. Instead of asking how you got into Star Wars, we already mentioned a little bit of you guys both doing some content online and that kind of stuff. So Watts, I'm going to start with you. Tell us, you mentioned a music podcast before. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's called Boombox Music Talk, and it was born out of a couple of different areas, but I had a serious back injury, made me stop being able to play music live, and had to kind of scale that back. So it fulfilled a little bit of that music creative endeavor. But also, my father had developed dementia and Alzheimer's. Took care of him for a little while. My brother and I, and he had so many great stories. Just growing up, hearing all those stories, and I used to always say that, okay, I'm going to go down there sometime, take a weekend, and try to record a bunch of his stories. Well, didn't happen. Then you get to a point, you always think you're going to have your memory, and then it was very surreal to watch somebody literally lose their memories. Now those stories are gone. Thankfully, my brother's got a ridiculous memory. He remembers a lot of them better than I do, and he's older than me. I've got 3 older brothers, so they remember a lot of it. Um, but seeing that, I said, you know what? I want to do this also to be able to capture mine and my brothers, because all 3 of my brothers are musicians. We had a very kind of lively inner circle of musicians that have spun out and done some really cool things. And I wanted to tell that story so that, my kids, their kids, people that we have on the show, it's a little, kind of audio scrapbooking. I always think of it as, for these people and for myself. And so kind of born out of a couple of things, and just try to really approach it from that angle, and always out of celebration. There's no critiquing. It's art. It's relative perspectives, man. So for us, it's like, hey, what do we like about this? Let's riff on that, right? Let's dive into that. So
That's great. Yeah, I noticed your wall of guitars and stuff behind you. It's
yeah.
it's quite the room. I'll have to
I forget about it.
tune in, man. That's awesome. So definitely look
Yeah.
forward to listening to that, and I hope any music fans listening will tune in as well. That's fantastic. Ryan, you are active, I know, on Instagram is where I see a lot of your content. You have a YouTube channel as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I do have one which isn't really always active, but it's like if I try to post some content on there, it's kind of mostly like experimental,
Okay.
just to see if I can see what kind of sticks, if I'm getting certain viewership.
Yep. Tell us a little bit about the content that you do create.
Yeah, so a lot of my content is I tried to kind of mix it up between anything like pop culture related, or sometimes just like general blog, like even like maybe some general stuff about my life. And then like even like with events that came up like CaperCon and all that, I kind of usually tend to push a lot of that content, especially since I am kind of like a starting off cosplayer.
Yep.
So like that, I'm trying to kind of get myself out there into that field.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a picture. I think you're in my pictures posted from CaperCon actually this year.
Yeah.
I'm positive you are. I'm going to quickly scroll through while you talk. But
Ryan,
you
are
also do
you
a lot of like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna ask Ryan, are you connected with I believe her handle is Crafting on Ilum? You know her?
Oh, she's been on the show
Cra-
before.
Crafting
Oh,
on
she
Ilum.
has?
Yeah.
Ilum.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, I'll send you her link. She's awesome, but she does cosplay stuff. She makes all her is
This is
that
one of her shirts.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But she's freaking great at it, man. If you're
Yeah.
getting into that world of cosplay, and she's super helpful and friendly too. Like if you've got questions, I'm sure she would be more than happy to like help you as you're going down that journey.
Yeah,
Ryan
that's the
and I at
picture.
CaperCon. That's it. There you go.
That's
Pirate
Nice.
Jedi, and your cosplays are fantastic, man.
Yeah.
I love the. You even showed up for trivia night because I did the CaperCon trivia night, and you showed up full ready to go,
Yeah.
cosplayed up Anakin Skywalker. That was sick.
Yeah.
I love the dedication, and you crushed it. For anyone listening, your Star Wars trivia knowledge
Nice.
is
Yeah.
like top level. So yeah, but you also
That's
do
awesome.
a lot of like, I get like self care, self advocacy, that kind of stuff. Very open with what's going on in your life, what's going on in the community, the support that you see supporting other people, the stuff that you do with the Eagles, which is our local hockey team. So you do a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. Your account's like really, for me, really great to follow because it's a little bit of local, a little bit of Star Wars, a little bit of like just everything. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, and
That's
you said
super
you're
cool.
trying to,
I'll check
yeah.
it out because I'm deep into that side. I've definitely dealt with my share of darkness over the years, and then after getting a really bad back injury, just I think it's important. It's cool that more people are talking openly about these things instead of all pretending like we're all fucking great and perfect and
Yeah.
no problems, because the more we share about it, the less it gets stigmatized, and you can be open about sharing that if something bothers you, and speaking up about it. So good on you for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Any cosplays in planning that you want to share or anything that you're working on?
Oh,
You can feel free to say no.
actually, I have somewhere on my phone here. It was kind of just something I mocked up, and it was actually I would say one thing. It's an Inquisitor cosplay.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
kind of taking into the more of like last year I was
Nice.
a Jedi, so
Yep.
this year it's going to be something.
It's all about balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just kind of like my mock-up right here.
Oh, sick.
So
Sweet.
it's
Nice.
basically taking two images from Amazon, and then I kind of just crop them together to kind of give like a concept of what it might look like.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you gonna try to hit up HalCon in November? Or are you saving this for like a CaperCon kind of event? Something
I'm
more
probably
local.
more saving it for CaperCon,
Okay.
and I might even maybe try to approach it for like if there's anything Halloween related, maybe.
Oh yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing it. I'm hoping to have, like I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping to have my Mandalorian all set for HalCon in November. Crunch is already on. I realized that like the summer passed. I was like, through the whole summer, I was like, oh, I got plenty of time. I can plan this out. And now like summer's coming to an end. I'm like, oh shoot, I got a couple of months. But enough about that. Let's get into the Star Wars part of the stuff. So I want to know how you guys got into Star Wars. Ryan, sorry, Watts. We'll start with you. How did you get into Star Wars? What was your introduction?
Yeah, like most things in my life, it's from my three older brothers, right? Like
Makes
you
sense.
can't help but just pick up everything that they're doing, and I kind of idolized them growing up. But having them, because I kind of come from that I meant to mention to Charlie earlier. He's got that GI Joe poster in the background. That was more of my kind of generation, GI Joe, Transformers kind of thing. But having them as kind of an influence to have the toys around, have the movies
Mm,
around, I kind of never remember a time where it wasn't around.
yeah.
Um, but and the two things that really kind of hooked me on it were, well, really a couple of things. But one, um, for a long time, I would always, especially when I was a kid, I would go to sleep, with things playing on TV. And I just wore out A New Hope, the first Star Wars. There's longer periods of kind of quiet time, almost like ASMR is so big right now. There's a lot of moments in that movie that are just very heavy ASMR kind of.
Mm,
You really get to hear the sound design, and I kind of fell in love with that side of it. But also from a musical perspective, I was just blown away some of the motifs that John Williams was laying down between that and Empire Strikes Back. I was like, this is like nothing else I'm watching. This is so different, so unique. It was incredible. And then also, as I kind of aged, and maybe it was partly from this, but I in college, which doesn't benefit me at all now, but like most degrees, I majored in ancient world literature and ancient world history, and so I studied a lot of mythology. Right,
mm,
so uh, that side of it, once I started getting a little bit older and understanding, okay, not only is cool aesthetics, cool sound effects, cool music, there's a bigger story going on here that has existed throughout time, throughout the ages, these
hmm
same constants. And I kind of locked, once I saw that, I was just like, well, damn, Star Wars has like components of everything I love in life
Yeah.
all in one thing, which I think is,
Yeah.
I mean, that was Lucas's, that was his crowning victory, is he was
Yeah.
somehow able to mix so many things into one thing and have it actually work. Right.
Yeah.
So it just always with me from that point on.
Absolutely. Ryan, same question. How'd you get into Star Wars?
I gotta say, probably goes way back since I was a kid, and that was probably when I can remember being introduced to it when the films were on video. So
Right.
probably like
Yep.
VHS, like even from from basically the original trilogy, and then I think even at one point like the Phantom Menace. So like those films when they were still on VHS, and then basically going into DVD.
Yep.
Um, so like from there, it's like I remember even watching. I think the movie I probably might have watched specifically was probably Empire Strikes Back.
Mm, yeah.
That's what I probably remember. And then the second one was Return of the Jedi. Those are the two I can least remember. And then eventually watching episode one. And then I kind of only maybe watched part of episode two. But then I watched all of like Revenge of the Sith. So like
Mm,
from that point, like this is again, I must have been maybe like 5 or 6 years old at the time watching that. Um, and a little older when we got to Revenge of the Sith. But then I got reintroduced to it when they started putting things out there at the Clone Wars.
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So like
Yeah.
I was probably maybe like 15 or 16 when that was kind of being thrown in there. So like that kind of regained my interest, and then probably once when they actually started making like new films, it probably even exploded from there.
Yeah. The amount of people who either from the start or with Disney Plus now being able to rewatch it, like got so hooked on Star Wars thanks to the Clone Wars and the cartoons, the animated stuff, is crazy. Like 93 episodes of hearing people be like, yeah, I kind of like we got Disney Plus and I rewatched the Clone Wars and it's amazing. Or like, yeah, I kind of like knew about Star Wars, but I got super hooked on Clone Wars. Like it's so many people, it's crazy. I
Well,
love.
if you, sorry, go ahead.
No, I love that answer every time it pops up. It's great because there's
Yeah,
it it makes the original, or not the original trilogy. Well, I mean, it adds to the original, but it makes the prequel movies so much more impactful, especially when you
yeah,
throw on the last season of Clone Wars and you see that like side by side kind of comparison of like what's happening with Anakin, what's going on with Ahsoka, those two things happening at once, and you watch Revenge, and you kind of see everything all happen. It adds so much to the story. It's crazy. It's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, and I think one of the reasons why too is because that, to me, it was really George's vision from the beginning, right? Like he
Mm,
always had this idea of pushing the CGI capabilities to where he could literally tell the story inside of the computer, only the computer, even the way, which obviously it's well known that he probably shouldn't be directing anybody. There's other people that can do it better. He's an idea guy, right? But he said himself, like the way he directs is he just, he just wants to tell the people what to say and have them go do it, right? And
yeah.
that's more
Yeah.
what you're doing in animation. You control every piece of that rather than trying to coax a performance, a performative art. It's a lot different. And I think
Mm,
he just hit his stride with it. It was, obviously it took a while to get going from just the ability to catch up to what they were trying to do. But I think when he's in his element and able to kind of do his thing, it comes off like he's intending it to come off, right?
yeah. Yeah. He gets to play with his digital puppets for sure.
Yeah.
That being said, what is like peak Star Wars for you? If you can pick one movie or show, game, book, comic, your favorite toothbrush, what is like peak Star Wars for you guys? Watts, you look deep in thought. Ryan, do you have one locked and loaded, ready to go?
Yeah, I would say Rogue One
Rogue
because
One. Wow.
yeah, it's like it's peak to me because of the fact that it literally takes place just before A New Hope. It's
All
kind of
right.
telling it's the prequel before the original. Kind of just telling literally
Okay.
moments before that happens. And I
Love
love
it.
the fact that even though if there's no Jedi in it, there is still some references to it. It still has an influence, especially
Yeah.
when Bail Organa mentions to Mom Mothma, "Oh, I got a friend," when they were having a
Yeah.
conversation. So it's like, okay, this is definitely leaning into A New Hope,
Yeah.
and then I also loved it how it almost kind of felt like not just like a science fiction movie, but an actual war film too, because nobody
Mm.
survives. It was
Oh
almost like a
yeah.
Saving
It's
Private
gritty.
Ryan kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
it was nobody survives at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Great answer. And one that
Yeah.
doesn't pop up a lot, but great answer. Watts?
Well, maybe we can make it pop up a lot because I mean that's my go-to as well.
Holy.
It was
Yeah.
as a whole, animation is my answer. I'm a huge animation lover. I love
Yeah.
anime too. Like I just love storytelling through the visual arts like that. So I'm always gonna I put on animated shows all the time. It's my go-to. However, outside of just that as a whole, and outside of A New Hope for the original because it impacted me as a child, that's the one I go to the most is Rogue One. It
Wow.
just the world that it lives in reminds me of A New Hope the most. So you've got the aesthetics of it. You do have the war element to it. Um, I think that K2SO is definitely up there in terms of my favorite droids. I love Alan Tudyk. He just crushed that role, and
Yeah.
also yeah, right, just
Yeah.
so good. But also, there's some really cool, tender moments with Jen Urso, and I love Michael Giacchino's score. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. I love where he went with it, and the fact that he only had like 3-4 weeks to write that whole thing. Like Alexander Desplat was supposed to be doing it, and they called, what a call to get. Like, hey man, we need you to write an entire score in like three
Yeah.
or four
3 weeks.
weeks. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn, I can't even write a song that fast. Like, yeah, 3 weeks. Okay. So, but he's still, and so I'm sure when he hears it, he hears a million things. He's like, oh my God, I wish I could do so many different things. But I still think with what he had to work with, just,
Yeah.
cool soundscape for that. Even on Jeddah with some of the weird kind of clingy instruments. And yeah, there's just something about it. I just want to live in that world for a little longer.
Did you see he was confirmed as the doing the score for Skeleton Crew?
Oh yeah,
No,
yeah.
Yeah. Just confirmed a couple of
sweet.
days ago. Yeah.
Oh man, you just made
Um,
my night. I was just looking it up when the trailer came out. I was like, "Who?" So cool. Thanks for
that's
letting me
him.
know.
That's
That's
him. Yeah.
awesome. Ever
Uh,
since Lost, man, he's
oh,
great. He's a genius.
he's good. He's good. Favorite character? Watts? You have a go-to favorite character?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it depends on the time of day, but um, I will say that in terms of the movies, I think Kylo Ren still with Adam Driver's performance
Wow. All right.
just a master class in the ability of acting in general. Talk about subtle acting. I mean, he says so much without saying. I mean, in fact, in Rise of Skywalker, he doesn't even speak in the last 30 minutes or something, but you don't notice it because he's got so much emotion with his
Mm,
physical performance that I just to this day I still think it's the most underrated. Yeah, I know it's still celebrated, still underrated
yeah.
performance. It's just genius. But I will say, over the years, man, Ahsoka somehow
Boom.
won me
Yeah.
over. Like
Yep.
I was one of those people at first, you're like, okay, whatever. This is, it's fun. It's cool. It's whatever. But man, seeing her grow up in the journey, so many emotional moments through the later storytelling with her where I didn't expect to be that connected to her. And I just adore that character now.
Yep. Absolutely. Ryan, same question. What's your favorite Star Wars character?
I would say it's Galen Merrick,
All
Starkiller.
right. Yeah.
Um, be-
Nice.
because like probably when I was like I guess when I was probably still had an Xbox 360, that game was probably something I played religiously. From like start to finish, like I beat every single difficulty level, collected all the stuff in it. But in general, the character is like I find him extremely interesting because he seems to be like the anti Luke Skywalker, the opposite.
Mm,
So
yeah.
it's like how like Luke Skywalker being the hero, but he's the anti-hero where instead of him being a Jedi, he started off as a Sith. And the whole entire dynamic where between him and Juno is very interesting because I think that's probably the couple that I ship the most. I think it's
Mm,
like the greatest Star Wars couple because again they come across like originally they didn't really seem like they loved each other, but it was very clear that somehow Starkiller had some attraction to her.
mm,
And then like leading into the rest of the story where it's very clear that when he tried to rescue her one time, he made the excuse like, "Oh, I need a pilot," but it's like no, because he's having feelings toward her.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Just want
nearing
fun.
the end where they had that
Excuse.
kiss, to me is just literally reminds me of Han and Leia.
Mm,
And then going into the second game, it's like, well, again, it's a clone of him, but it's like he's having the memories of the original Starkiller. And it's
mm-hmm.
like, so again, he's basically his brain in this clone's body.
Yeah.
And he's trying to find Juno, and it's like again, it becomes another love kind of thing. And it's like I just love the fact that his journey from originally becoming a Sith to then like dialing it back after learning things from Coda to like and finding out his lineage that he was like the son of a rogue Jedi
Mm,
leading into that like just that overall story leading up to his sacrifice was probably like the best storytelling.
Can you imagine seeing Sam Witwer in live action do some of that? Oh my God.
Well, I
That'd be
mean, like I
awesome.
always think it's probably the one character Disney's probably afraid to probably bring in
Oh, yeah.
because he's like,
Totally. It's
I
a
mean,
scary
because
venture.
no, because
yeah.
it's like he's overpowered in the games. I mean,
Yeah.
he's so overpowered that like I don't even think in canon I don't think they experimented with that yet.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's a very difficult character to bring over, I think, because
Yep.
you'd have to tone down his power in live action, and then you'd instantly get kickback from fans saying like, "Why'd you nerf him?" Basically, right? So
Yeah.
it's a
Mhm.
tough character to try to get right in live action and in current canon. So yeah, tough one.
And there's a
Um,
large demographic that already feels like that's crowded too, so it's tough. You'd have to have a really super compelling story, but anything to
for
get
sure.
Sam Witwer
Yeah,
rewarded in a live action character, just write something. I don't care. Just get him in somehow.
yeah.
He's so good.
Uh, do you guys tend to lean? I already talked about mine. Do you guys tend to lean more light side or dark side? What?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a Zen Buddhist, so I think by default, I have to answer light side. I think I spent a long time growing up kind of living in the dark side, just being the moody, brooding songwriter that, poet and musician that wanted to feel the pain as much as possible until probably only about, 7 or 8 years ago, finally and Buddhism helped me process a lot of things to get me to a better place
Mm,
of that's why one thing I love about Luke Skywalker at the end of the saga is him coming from a place of peace and purpose. Like I love that thought of him getting to that state. So I think for me it's definitely the light side, but if I'm talking about style, definitely the dark side. Like
yeah,
that's the musician part of me up on stage, like I want to dress like a Sith, dude. I want to be on the dark team.
yeah. The aesthetic wise, there's something going on there for
Yeah,
sure.
they win.
Uh, Ryan, I know you as more of a Jedi, but you're working on an Inquisitor cosplay. How you feeling? You more light or dark?
I mean, I feel like in personality, I kind of take more of like the way I am in general. I kind of maybe take more on the light side, but I don't mind experimenting with like a little bit of the dark. But I am
All right.
mostly a Jedi for the most part. Like I would take the Jedi route for the most part.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I get the answer. I think we all have a little bit of that darkness in us, or that temptation to go a little um a little bit dark side every once in a while. But yeah, that's all right. I kind of figured that was kind of going to be your answer. Do you guys have a favorite lightsaber color of choice? Like mine, I'm green all day, every day. Like I love the
Ooh,
green
cool.
lightsaber. Just like for me, because growing up, like that intro to Return of the Jedi, was like peak Star Wars to me. Like seeing
Yeah.
Luke just take on everyone in the desert and have the green lightsaber flip up and all that. Like that was just so like green lightsabers that's my default. What about you guys? Do you have a go-to lightsaber color? Watts?
Yeah, and speaking of the green, like one of my favorite bands is Typo Negative. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of them or not, but they're kind of this dark, kind of gothic sound, but with this Beatles Sabbath influence. And all of their stuff is black and green. So I think you might have answered one reason why I resonate with it a lot because Luke and that all black with the green lightsaber is awesome. For me, it's definitely blue, though. I mean, here I've got a blue shirt on right now. I think if you look in my closet, it's probably 20% gray, 20% brown, and 60% blue. Like I've always been that way. Just resonate with the color blue, and I'm not real sure why. I think it's powerful, but not. Oh, I can be overstimulated sometimes,
Mm.
and so the green kind of almost would serve that purpose for me. The blue is a little more toned down and sits a little more comfortable for me, I think.
Ryan, lightsaber color. What's your go-to?
All right. So I would probably say yellow. For the two reasons being like I kind of like how it had two different meanings, both legends and canon.
Mm-hmm.
So like legends being it was for the Sentinels, the type of Jedi that would kind of do the missions that other Jedi wouldn't, and they would go into like either the communities like within the different inhabitants on different planets to kind of be like a sovereign protector, but kind of almost like they're kind of like secret agent sort of thing.
Mhm.
They're doing the missions that other Jedi can't. And then the second meaning behind it would probably be it's almost similar to Ahsoka with the white lightsabers,
Mm.
where it represents a person that they're not a Jedi or a Sith, but they kind of went into a different direction.
Mm.
Where it's like where Ventress being like it was confirmed in the Bad Batch, she has a yellow saber, so
Yeah.
she kind of completely abandoned both the Jedi and the Sith, and she's just basically on her own.
Yeah.
So I kind of like the
Yeah.
individual independent side of it. That's probably why I kind of prefer yellow.
Yeah, and we see that with Rey going at the end of
Mm-hmm.
the sequels, going with what I presume is kind of a new path. Whether she's rebuilding the Jedi, but in a different way based on the old text that she read, but like clearly Luke and Yoda kind of are like, it's not a great read. But there might be something there that goes back to Old Republic, High Republic kind of days of that, like a little bit more loosey goosey Jedi, a little bit that aren't afraid to go out in the community. So I'm very curious to see what that yellow saber is going to signify. So that'll be an
Mm-hmm.
interesting one in years to come, I think. Do you guys have Star Wars collectibles? Anything stand out? This is kind of a new question I've been asking people because we've got some interesting answers so far. If it's not something you collect, like mine's probably my lightsabers. So you can do like as easy answer as that, or like my original VHS copies because I just dug those up and they're still in decent condition. Ryan, let's start with you for this one because I know you have a few lightsabers. I've held a couple of your lightsabers. So what's a Star Wars thing that stands out in your collection?
Probably the one thing that stand out, which is kind of something I recently acquired, and it's the Survivor Saber from TXQ.
Sick.
And
I
it's
love
probably
that saber.
it's probably the most game accurate version,
Yeah.
given with the whole like pommel being silver and all that, and the
Mhm.
sizing. Like if you ever held it in person, the sizing's pretty accurate too. Like it's definitely like the right size. Like it's almost like they took the
That's what
in-game
she said.
model. Yeah, it's like they always took the in-game model, and it's if you're holding in your hand, you would definitely kind of tell, okay, yeah, this is how it would probably feel in game.
I love that.
So
That
yeah,
is awesome.
it's like right now it's kind of like my prized one. So it's like because it's like the fact I've been getting into a lot of Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order, and I just kind of love that design.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Watts, you a collector?
Yeah, mine is definitely on the Lego side. So
Ooh,
I've
all
got
right.
tons and tons and it's all Star Wars based. That's pretty much the only thing that I collect in Legos. But got a ton of. In fact, I've started just even if I don't have time to do it, I've just started stockpiling them when they come out as like it's my retirement thing to do. Like, okay, when I
Nice.
finally retire, even if I don't get to them now, I've got a bunch I can build. I've got a couple here. Like I've got. Let's see if you can see this here. Got the old original land
Lanspeed.
speeder,
Fantastic.
the original speeder, and then I've got this one, the from the Solo movie,
Oh, cool. I love
which
that.
to me was such a cool nod to Lucas in Solo. That first scene, that
Mm-hmm.
opening scene where they're stealing that speeder and it's the hot rod kind of chase, and it's
Yep.
cool design too. I kind of miss the old school speeders like that. They did it in Mandalorian a couple of times, but other than that, a lot of
Yeah.
it's been kind of the more Return of the Jedi trooper speeder now, which is cool too. I mean, those are definitely cool, but when I think of speeder, I will always forever go back to the land speeder, right? So,
Yeah.
but they've done a great job. I mean, the sets are very well built, and good variety, and it's a
Yeah.
blast. It's my kind of meditative thing to do to just zone out, right, and build.
I love that. That's great. I love building
What do
Legos.
you
Like
what
I
do
have a
you
few.
collect? Oh, you do? Okay,
Aside
cool.
from my lightsabers, like I said, the VHS copies of the original trilogy. But I do have a couple of
I'm
Lego sets that
jealous.
I just love, man. It's I have the Darth Vader bust head, um,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple. I have like Ray's junk collector speeder thing as well.
Yeah.
It's talking to speeders. I have Yoda's hut with the like training montage Luke minifigure, and one of my prized Lego collectibles is a real deep cut. It's Ian from the Star Wars Lego Yoda something. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a young Han Solo, and he has a name tag that says Ian through the whole movie, and then he flips the eye is kind of sideways, and he flips it down, and it's Han, but you don't realize it till like you're at the end of the movie. So I have Ian as an action figure,
Nice.
or like
That's
as a
awesome.
Lego minifigure, and it came with like the Blu-ray copy of that movie or something. So like random kind of collection, but he's just back there somewhere. Um, but
Nice.
yeah, I have the weird. I like those kind of weird little collectibles, um, and then like my shirts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with that.
Of course. All right, last couple of questions. We'll go quick on this one because I want fun answers for the last one. So, favorite affiliation: Jedi, Bounty Hunter, Sith, Ewoks, Wookiees. You can hang out with one group in Star Wars for a weekend. Who you hanging out with? Ryan, let's start with you.
I would probably hang out with probably the Rebels.
All right.
Because, like,
Solid
especially if
answer.
it was like the Rebels crew from the Rebel show, like
Oh, hell
the
yeah.
Spectres.
Yeah.
Because, like, the amount of, like, because I actually, after watching that show, it's like the dynamic they have being like it's a family kind of
Yeah.
thing. And if they
Mm-hmm.
bring anybody else on their ship, it ends up becoming like another interesting dynamic. So that's
Yeah.
what I would kind of prefer.
I love it. I love Zeb coming back for the Mando Grogu movie.
Yeah.
It's gonna
Yeah.
be a time. Watts, who you hanging with?
Very cool. Yeah, for me, it's the bounty hunters, hands
Yeah.
down. Especially if we're talking about for a weekend. Yeah, you're gonna have a good time. You're gonna do some things might scare you a little bit, but by the end of the weekend, you'll be really glad that you did them, kind of thing.
You're not
That's
being the
mine all the
musician. You're
way.
not hanging out with the Max Rebo band. You're not hanging out with the Cantina band or anything. You're just going straight, just pure
No,
danger.
because it's more like, yeah, going and hanging out with the band afterwards, really, right? It's the
Yeah.
shenanigans that we used to get up to after the show.
I like that answer. That's a good one. And building my own Mando suit, breaking away from the Jedi stuff. I can get that little bounty hunter appeal. I'm
Nice.
feeling that lately. Final question. I know this has gone a little long. Thank you guys for sticking it out. Star Wars is basically just constant suffering, tragedy, laser swords, awesome ponchos, and space beasts. So if you were hanging out in the Star Wars universe, if you were placed in the Star Wars universe, but you met your end, your grisly end, in a hilarious and haphazard way. For instance, mine would absolutely be I would go, pss, 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 come here, little guy, to a rancor or something stupid because I just have like I see an animal and I'm just like I want to pet that thing. So that'd be mine. I would definitely die petting an animal that I really shouldn't, like a fire breathing dragon snake or something. So how what hilariously stupid way would you guys die in the Star Wars universe? Watts, let's start with you for this one.
I think for me, for some reason, my extremities don't work a lot of times. Like my fingers, like I drop a lot of stuff. Like just random. Like for a long time, me and my ex, we had a joke because every time I would open a water bottle, I would drop the cap, and so it just became this thing of like, oh, dropped a cap all the time. So I would probably get ready to look cool and pull my lightsaber out and then drop it, turn it on while simultaneously dropping in it would just like spin around and slice me in half. And I would just fall over and be like, oh, here lies the Jedi Watts. He cut himself in half.
Just
Sounds
Darth
about
Maul
right.
yourself. All right.
Yep,
That's
yep. Sounds
Yeah,
about
and
right.
you don't have that anger and rage to keep yourself like, wait for your robot legs.
Exactly.
You're just like, God, dang it. All right,
Yep.
fine. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's very
Quick and done.
yep. Quick and that's it. I'm not gonna say quick and painless, but yeah, the quick and done. That's a good way. Ryan, what hilariously terrible way would you perish in the Star Wars universe?
I'd probably say there's probably two of them. Being one of them, probably getting accidentally, probably by my own accord, would probably be thrown out of an airlock,
Oh, jeez.
or 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 getting lost somewhere, like say the Death Star, and basically falling into the trash compactor.
They never have rails. There's no
No,
rails in Star
Yeah.
no,
Wars. Like
no.
the whole thing is an OSHA violation, not like
Yeah,
Acolyte OSHA, but like, like just safety
yeah,
rails.
like
You're building
yeah,
a
there's
bajillion-dollar Death Star. Fire some rails in there. Keep our friend
yeah.
Ryan from falling to his grisly death. I love
I
that
think it's
answer.
yet another just Palpatine, tease. Like, yeah, let's just see if these people, how many fall off. They can't. Him and Vader are
That's
Yeah.
gonna
it.
play
Yeah.
some bets on it. Like
Yeah,
how many today?
yeah, the throne room doesn't even have only
What's
has like a couple rails. Like, I
Yeah.
mean,
yeah?
like,
Yeah.
What's the
I
over
mean,
under today?
that's that's it. That you know what? I love that as like headcanon of him just like
Yeah.
purposefully not putting rails because it's just like, yes, die on my Death Star. That
Yep.
is, I'm accepting that as canon right now in my head. That is fantastic.
Glad I could offer
Well,
something.
fellas, thank you so much for joining us. I know this went a little longer than we usually do, so thank you if you're listening. Thanks for sticking around. Final thing that I want to ask you guys is let people know where they can follow you online if you want them to. What's your go-to place? Watts, let's start with you. Where can people follow what you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, pretty much all socials at Boombox Music Talk. I will say that Instagram is really more of my jam because I get to release my reels for the podcast and kind of promote that way. That's a little bit more fun for me, and then Threads for a little bit more of a personal engagement to talk and things like that. Other than that, definitely check out the YouTube page for Boombox. Same thing, Boombox Music Talk for every episode we do because it's a full production. There's music, sound effects, media clips that I pull in. So I make playlists for each episode so that if anybody wants to dig in, say, oh that I want to see what that song was. Let me look that up, or let me dig into this philosophy clip. Those kinds of things. I create playlists for all the episodes on there. So the YouTube channel is a good place to kind of dig in, and also all the content, all the episodes are there as well. So but pretty much anywhere and everywhere at Boombox Music Talk.
You have a new subscriber. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
No worries. That's great, man. I hope people check out your show. And of course, everything's going to be linked below. So if you didn't catch all of that, just click the link below and you'll go straight to the Instagram page or wherever else. Ryan, where can people follow you?
Primarily, probably the best connection would be my Instagram. So at LordCade1, you can just send me a follow request and I will respond. Especially since I kind of like to have real followers, not bots. So that's why I would have my account private. So if anyone's asking, that's why.
Yeah.
And if I do, a lot of my content also has a mixture of TikTok related content. So you might even see my TikTok handle within some videos. So just keep an eye out for those. And that's what I can pretty much say from there.
Excellent. Again, your Instagram will be linked in the show notes. So if anyone's interested, throw Ryan a follow. Once again, fellas, thank you so much for joining me. This was a packed episode, so I appreciate you sticking around and going through it. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and hanging out in the Secret Friends Unite Discord channel as Canardian_Jedi. As always, may the Force be with you. Rex, play us out.